The sun was setting over the small town of Ridgefield, painting the sky in shades of gold and deep crimson. The air was calm, the kind of quiet that felt sacred, like the world was finally at peace. Down a dusty dirt road on the edge of town, a tall, broad-shouldered black man named Marcus Reed walked beside his loyal German shepherd, Shadow. The pair moved in perfect rhythm. No leash, no commands. Shadow didn't need them. He stayed close to Marcus's side, occasionally glancing up for a pat or a quiet word. It was a ritual they did every evening. The same path, the same time, always ending with Marcus throwing a stick and Shadow proudly bringing it back, tail wagging. To the locals, Marcus was a mystery. They saw him around sometimes, buying groceries, fixing his old pickup, or chopping wood behind his small cabin in the woods. He rarely spoke more than a polite hello, and never joined in-town gossip or bar chatter. People called him that quiet guy out by the ridge. Some thought he was ex-military. Others guessed he'd just had a rough life. The truth was more complicated, and far more dangerous. Years ago, Marcus Reed had been the most lethal Delta Force commander the U.S. military had ever produced. He'd led Black Ops missions in war zones the public never even knew existed. Operations so classified that even his superiors didn't know every detail. He'd rescued hostages from enemy strongholds, dismantled terrorist networks, and neutralized threats before they reached American soil. He was the man soldiers whispered about. The ghost. He was the one sent in when every other option failed. But that life came with a price. Marcus had seen too much blood, too much betrayal, too many good men dying for causes they barely understood. The nightmares followed him home, and when the war finally ended for everyone else, it never really ended for him. Shadow was the only one who helped him find peace again. Marcus had found the dog abandoned near a military base overseas, hungry, injured, and scared. He'd nursed him back to health, trained him, fought beside him. Together they'd survived ambushes, explosions, and sleepless nights in foreign deserts. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was Marcus's partner, his family, his therapy. After retiring, Marcus had bought the small cabin in Ridgefield, hoping to start over. He spent his mornings fixing engines, his afternoons reading on the porch, and his evenings walking with Shadow. It wasn't the life of a soldier anymore. It was the life of a man who wanted nothing more than peace. Sometimes, when kids rode by on their bikes, Marcus would smile and wave. He'd even toss them a friendly warning. Don't stay out too late. These woods get dark fast. But behind that calm, kind smile was a man who still carried the instincts of war. The awareness, the reflexes, the quiet readiness for danger. He'd never lost those. They were buried deep asleep, but never gone. Shadow seemed to sense it too. The dog was fiercely protective. Whenever a stranger approached, Shadow would stand tall, muscles tense, eyes fixed. Marcus would laugh softly, saying, "Easy, boy. Those days are over." But deep down he knew peace was fragile, especially for someone like him. That evening, as the wind rustled through the trees and the sun dipped below the ridge, Marcus took a deep breath. He looked at the horizon, orange fading into purple, and whispered to Shadow, "We made it, buddy. Finally, a life without fighting." Shadow barked once, as if agreeing. Neither of them knew that this calm, this simple, quiet life was about to be destroyed. Not by war, not by enemies overseas, but by the very people who wore the badge of law and order. Within 24 hours, Ridgefield would no longer be peaceful. And the world would remember the name Marcus Reed, the quiet man they should have left alone. That evening, the quiet streets of Ridgefield were wrapped in calm, porch lights flickering on, kids heading inside for dinner, crickets beginning their nightly song. Marcus and Shadow were returning from their usual walk, the last rays of sunlight fading behind the trees. But across town, a single radio call shattered the calm. Suspicious black male walking near Ridgefield Woods. Possibly armed, no details, no evidence. Just a report, vague, lazy, and dangerous. 2 patrol cars peeled out from the station, sirens silent but lights flashing. Inside the first cruiser, Officer Daniels gripped the steering wheel with one hand, his jaw tight. "Let's go see what this guy's up to," he muttered. His partner, Officer Briggs, barely looked up from his phone. "Probably just some hiker. People call in nonsense all the time," Daniels shrugged. "Still, Can't be too careful these days. The words "can't be too careful" echoed like a warning bell. At the same moment, Marcus was reaching his front gate, a simple wooden fence that led to the small cabin he and Shadow called home. The German shepherd walked happily ahead, tail wagging, tongue out, a stick still in his mouth from their last throw. Marcus smiled. "Drop it, soldier," he said softly. But then, flashing red and blue lights cut through the dusk, painting the trees in chaotic colors. Shadow barked once, alert. Marcus turned, frowning as the patrol car screeched to a stop behind him, gravel scattering across the road. "Hey, stop right there!" a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Marcus blinked, confused. "Is there a problem, officer?" he called back, keeping his voice calm. "Hands where we can see them," Officer Daniels shouted, stepping out of the car with his hand already hovering over his gun. Marcus hesitated. "Sir, I live here. Is something wrong?" "Just do as you're told," Daniels snapped. Shadow moved closer, positioning himself between Marcus and the officers, growling low. It wasn't aggression, it was instinct. He'd done the same in combat zones, protecting his human without hesitation. "Easy, boy," Marcus murmured, raising his hand slowly. "We're fine. They're just confused." But confusion turned to chaos in a heartbeat. Shadow barked again, a sharp protective warning. And that's when Daniels flinched. A reflex born of fear, not logic. Bang! The gunshot echoed through the night. Birds exploded from the nearby trees. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. For a second, everything went still. Then Marcus turned and saw Shadow lying motionless on the dirt, his eyes wide, a dark red stain spreading beneath him. "Shadow," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. He dropped to his knees beside his friend, his hands trembling. No, stay with me, buddy. Please." But there was no movement, no breath, just silence. The officers were shouting something now, commands, excuses, but Marcus couldn't hear them. The world had gone muffled, drowned beneath the pounding of his heart. He looked up slowly, his face pale and hollow. "Why?" he said softly. "He wasn't attacking you." Daniels lowered his gun, breathing hard. "He came at me," he muttered defensively. "Had to protect myself." Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "You shot my dog because he barked?" "Control your mutt next time," Briggs added coldly, stepping forward as if he were the victim. And just like that, something inside Marcus broke. The air around him seemed to change. His eyes, once calm and kind, hardened like steel. The soldier, the one he'd buried deep inside, began to rise again. He reached down, closing Shadow's eyes with trembling fingers. His heart ached with grief, but beneath it something darker began to burn. A calm, quiet rage. He stood slowly, his gaze fixed on the two officers. They didn't know it yet, but in that single moment, their world had changed forever. Marcus Reed, the man they thought was just another suspicious black male, had just lost the only thing keeping his demons asleep. And now, those demons were awake. For the first time in years, the soldier in Marcus Reed woke up. The calm, quiet man who lived alone in the woods was gone, replaced by something far older, far deadlier. He knelt beside Shadow's still body, his trembling hands resting on the dog's fur, his eyes hollow and distant. The night was silent except for the faint hum of police radios and the distant chirping of crickets. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Rest easy, partner," he said softly. "I'll handle this." The two officers stood a few feet away, guns drawn but unsure. The air felt heavier. Daniel swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Sir, get on the ground now," he barked, his voice trembling slightly. Marcus didn't move. "Sir, that's a lawful command," Briggs yelled, stepping closer, the barrel of his weapon shaking in his hands. Marcus lifted his head slowly, his eyes cold, sharp, unblinking. Eyes that had seen war, death, and chaos, but never fear. His voice was calm, but it cut through the night like a knife. "You have no idea what you just did." Daniels took another step, trying to assert control. "Hey, I said get—" He didn't finish. Before the next word left his mouth, Marcus moved, faster than either officer could process. He twisted Daniel's wrist in a single, brutal motion, disarming him instantly. The gun clattered to the ground, and within a heartbeat, Marcus had it in his hand, only to break it apart piece by piece, dropping the dismantled weapon at the officer's feet. Briggs barely had time to react. He drew his gun in panic, but Marcus stepped forward, sweeping his leg in a clean arc that sent the officer crashing backward. Wind knocked out of him. Both men hit the ground hard, stunned. It had all happened in less than 5 seconds. Marcus stood over them, unarmed, but somehow more dangerous than anyone they'd ever faced. His breathing was steady, his stance perfectly balanced. The posture of a man trained to kill with or without a weapon. "Who the hell are you?" Daniels gasped, clutching his wrist. Marcus didn't answer. His silence was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Instead, he turned and walked toward his cabin, calm, measured steps crunching on the gravel. Every motion was precise, controlled, and deliberate. He didn't look back once. Inside, he closed the door behind him, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the old wooden cabin was completely still. Then Marcus walked to the corner, where a large steel chest sat covered in dust and chains. He unlocked it slowly. Inside lay pieces of a life he had buried long ago. A Delta Force insignia. A stack of medals and commendations, each representing a mission the world would never know about. A folded American flag, and a worn photograph. Marcus, younger, standing in uniform with Shadow sitting proudly beside him, both of them wearing combat tags. He ran a thumb across the photo, his jaw tightening. Memories of missions gone wrong, of soldiers lost, of blood and sacrifice flooded his mind. He had given this country everything. His strength, his sanity, his brothers, his soul, and now, they had taken the last thing he loved. Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out his old tactical vest, black and faded with time. The weight of it felt familiar, heavy but right. He checked each pocket with military precision, adjusting straps, securing holsters, his hands moving on instinct. He paused in front of a cracked mirror, looking at the reflection of a man he hadn't seen in years. Not the quiet civilian, but the soldier, the ghost. His voice was low, steady, and full of cold resolve. "I gave this country everything," he whispered, picking up Shadow's worn collar from the chest. "Now I'll take back my peace." He looked one last time at the empty leash by the door, then turned off the light. Outside, the night wind stirred the trees as Marcus Reed, the man the military once called the one-man army, stepped back into the darkness, and for the first time in a long time, the hunter was awake. By nightfall, the Ridgefield Police Department was in complete chaos. Radios buzzed with panic. 2 officers down, not dead, but disarmed and restrained. A dispatcher shouted. Another voice crackled through. They said the suspect knew Delta Force combat tactics. "Sir, whoever he is, he's trained." The police chief, a heavy-set man named Barnes, slammed his fist on the desk. "Mobilize everyone. Nobody takes out 2 of my officers and walks away," he barked. But deep down he had a feeling this wasn't a criminal. This was something else. Within the hour, SWAT trucks thundered down Ridgefield's quiet back roads. Dozens of officers formed a perimeter around Marcus Reed's cabin. The still forest was lit up by blinding white spotlights, slicing through the night like searchlights on a battlefield. Inside, Marcus sat quietly by the fireplace, Shadow's collar clutched in his hand. He wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. He'd fought wars overseas, but now he realized some battles had followed him home. Outside, a loudspeaker blared. "Marcus Reed, step out of the cabin with your hands in the air. This is your final warning." Marcus stood slowly, calm as the ticking clock on the wall. He opened the door and stepped out into the glare of the lights. The air was cold, the forest silent. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. He raised his hand slightly. "Stand down," he said, voice steady, commanding. "You've already done enough damage tonight. Get on the ground." The SWAT commander yelled back, weapon aimed. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his vest pocket, pulled something out, and tossed it toward them. "Read it," he said. A young officer picked up the worn ID card, shining his flashlight on it. The commander stepped closer, reading the words printed in bold. Master Sergeant Marcus Reed, U.S. Army Delta Force, retired. For a moment, nobody spoke. The forest, the night, the flashing lights, everything froze. The commander's face turned pale. He looked up slowly. You're that Marcus Reed?" Marcus nodded once. "I was. A long time ago." Chief Barnes pushed through the crowd, his expression tightening as recognition dawned. "My God," he muttered. "You're a legend. Operation Iron Dagger, Afghanistan, you saved a whole unit. Marcus's jaw tensed. And I came home to lose my only friend to your fear. His words cut through the air like glass. Cameras had started rolling. News crews arrived fast, drawn by the chaos. Reporters whispered to each other, realizing who the suspect really was. Marcus took a deep breath, stepping forward slowly, no fear in his movements. My dog wasn't just a pet. He was my partner. We served together. He survived explosions, gunfire, and nights so cold we thought we'd die. But he didn't survive your ignorance, the crowd murmured. A few officers lowered their rifles. Marcus's voice grew softer, but every word carried weight. You burst into a peaceful man's life because of a false report. No crime, no threat, just skin color and suspicion. He turned his gaze toward one of the cameras, staring straight into it. His eyes reflected years of service, pain, and disappointment. The look of a man who'd seen too much both abroad and at home. If you fear the color of a man more than the content of his heart, he said quietly, you've already lost your humanity. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the reporters stopped whispering. The SWAT commander slowly lowered his rifle. Chief Barnes stepped forward, voice shaking. Marcus, I'm sorry. We didn't know. Marcus looked at him, his expression calm but cold. You didn't want to know. He turned away, walking toward Shadow's resting place near the trees. The cameras followed every step. The image of a grieving soldier standing over his fallen companion broadcast live to the entire town. And soon, the entire nation. Within hours, the video went viral. Headlines screamed, "Decorated black veteran confronts police after they kill his dog." From hero to suspect, the story that shook Ridgefield. And somewhere deep in the night, Marcus Reed, soldier, survivor, and man of peace, and whispered one last time to the wind, "Rest now, Shadow. The world's finally listening." By the next morning, the world knew his name. Every major network flashed the headline across their screens. Veteran hero's dog killed by cops. Delta Force commander stands against injustice. Clips of Marcus standing in front of his cabin played on repeat. The calm in his eyes, the pain in his voice, the truth in his words. It wasn't just another story. It was a wake-up call. A war hero betrayed at home. The Ridgefield Police Department scrambled to control the fallout. The 2 officers involved were suspended pending investigation. Comment sections exploded with outrage. People demanded accountability, not just apologies. That afternoon, Police Chief Barnes drove alone to Marcus's home. No cameras. No uniform. Just guilt. When Marcus opened the door, the chief stood silently, hat in hand. I came to say, I'm sorry. For what happened. For what we let happen. Marcus didn't speak. His gaze drifted toward the corner of the room, to Shadow's leash still hanging by the door untouched. The silence between them said more than any apology could. Finally, Marcus said quietly, Sorry doesn't bring him back, Chief. But maybe it can bring change. The chief nodded, his voice breaking. Then I'll help however I can. A week later, the town gathered at the small park near Ridgefield Woods, the same woods where Marcus once walked his loyal companion. Beneath the old oak tree, Marcus laid Shadow to rest. People came from everywhere. Neighbors, veterans, officers, strangers who had seen the story online. Black, white, young, old. Some brought flowers. Others simply stood in silence, hats over hearts. As Marcus placed Shadow's collar on the fresh soil, he whispered, You stayed by my side through everything. You did your duty. Rest easy now, soldier. A single tear rolled down his cheek, glistening in the sunlight. When a reporter asked him, Mr. Reed, what will you do next? Marcus turned, eyes steady. I'm going to make sure no one's silence costs another innocent life, he said. Months passed, but Marcus didn't fade from the headlines. He transformed the tragedy into a movement. He launched a non-profit called Shadow Watch. Its mission, to train police departments nationwide on racial bias, combat veteran awareness, and empathy under pressure. Marcus personally led the first seminar, standing before a room of officers, some skeptical, some ashamed, most simply listening. He started the session by holding up Shadow's old service tag. This tag belonged to the bravest partner I ever had, he said. He didn't see color, rank, or fear, just right and wrong. If we all learned to see the world the way he did, maybe fewer hearts would break. The words spread online like wildfire. Videos of his speeches reached millions. Schools, academies, and veteran groups joined the cause. People began calling Marcus not just a soldier, but a guardian of peace. For the first time in years, Ridgefield wasn't divided by fear, but united by purpose. One evening, long after the cameras stopped rolling and the world had moved on, Marcus returned to the park. The air was cool, the sky painted with 1,000 stars. He knelt before Shadow's grave, brushing away a few fallen leaves. In his hand he held a medal, the silver star he had earned years ago for valor under fire. He laid it gently on the soil. "You taught me how to fight again, boy," he whispered. "Not for war, but for peace." The wind rustled through the trees, almost like an answer, as Marcus stood and walked away. The moonlight cast his shadow long across the grass, but beside it, faintly, there was another, the outline of a dog, walking faithfully by his side. And for the first time since that night, Marcus smiled because peace, he realized, wasn't something you waited for. It was something you fought for, one heart at a time. You've just watched another story from Healing Corner, where every heart finds its voice, and every pain finds its purpose.
If this story touched you, don't just scroll away.
Let it stay with you, change you, and remind you that kindness still matters. Subscribe, share, and join our family, and because at Healing Corner we don't just tell stories, we heal through them.